Hello, everyone. So today we are back with our webinar series, and myself, Niladri. Today we are going to discuss on how to convene and conduct virtual AGM. So looking into the COVID-19 pandemic scenario, what the corporate people are facing, the companies are facing, that they are unable to open their offices, and conducting AGM is a very important thing, the due date being 30th September. So today we have thought of taking this important matter on how the companies can conduct virtual AGM. So let me start sharing the screen. Uh, there is some problem I can see while sharing the screen. Uh, anyway, so there are some technical issues. I can't share the screen right now. However, let me start with the presentation. I'll go through it in a little bit detail so that everyone is able to understand how to conduct and convene virtual AGM. To start by, Tax Mantra Global, we are an advisory tax and regulatory services. We are a 360-degree tax and legal firm, having our presence in India, Singapore, and US. And we are deeply working on fundraising, etc., and other tech. Global transfer pricing things and all, cross-border transactions. So coming to the topic, how to conduct and convene virtual AGM. The first thing that we should know is what is an AGM, annual general meeting. So annual general meeting is a meeting which is called for the shareholders of the company. So every year a company should conduct annual general meeting. This is basically conducted so that the officers of the company, who are the managers of the company, they can answer the queries of the shareholders in the AGM, and the shareholders have the right to ask questions to the managers of the company, who are the directors of the company. So annual general meeting is a mandatory general meeting which should be conducted by each and every company within 6 months from the end of each financial year. So as we are in the year 2020, so for the financial year ended 31st March 2020, the AGM should be conducted and held within 30th of September 2020. The meeting is called for the common shareholders of the company, wherein they being the owners. So shareholders are the owners of the company, and they have the right to question the managers on how the company has performed and what is the way forward. Coming to the second thing, what are the basic things which are discussed in AGM? So what are the things which are taken up in AGM? So there, in AGM, generally the 4 ordinary businesses are conducted. So what are the 4 ordinary businesses? Number 1, adoption of the audited financial statements of the company. The second is declaration of dividend by the company. The third is appointment of directors. The fourth one being appointment of statutory auditor. So these 4 businesses under the Companies Act are being called as ordinary businesses. So the Companies Act says that in an AGM, these 4 businesses are conducted by the company. Apart from these four ordinary businesses, the company can also conduct special businesses as well. The most important part of this webinar is as we are discussing on convening annual general meeting, and that too virtually. So why has this been why there is a need to convene virtual AGM? This is not a mandatory thing that you need to convene AGM virtually, but you can convene it physically as well. But considering the present situation, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, via its circular dated 5th of May 2020, they have said that, okay, as the companies, as the people have to follow the social distancing measures, so the MCA has come up with a circular saying that you can convene and conduct AGM through video conferencing or other audiovisual means. Now, who are eligible to conduct AGM, virtual AGM? Number one, companies which are required to provide e-voting facility. Number two, companies not required to provide e-voting facility. Now, largely we would be covering the second part, companies which are not required to provide e-voting facility, because e-voting facility is required to be provided by all the listed entities. For the unlisted entities, they are not required to provide e-voting facility. So we would be covering this type of companies in our webinar. So what are the companies which are not required to provide e-voting facilities, and how do you assure that the company is eligible to conduct virtual AGM? So how do you check this? So the number one check is, check whether the email address of the members are registered with the company. So this is very important, that when AGM is conducted virtually, no one would be present physically in that case. So what is important is, you need to send the notices of the AGM to all the members, that too by email. Also, when you send the notice of AGM to all the members, it should say like how the AGM is going to be conducted. So a link to joining the meeting, there would be a link in that. So how would you send that link? So basically the only way is to through email address of the shareholders. So the company should possess the email address of all the members of the company. The second thing is, the members, how would you now the second thing is, how to count those members? Like would you require to send the notice to all the members, or to half of the members, 50%, 70%, 75%? How is it done? So it basically says, the act basically says that the notice of AGM should be sent to all the members of the company. Now when it is conducted virtually, it might not be possible, or it might happen that the company does not have the email address of all the members in their database. Or it might be so that some of the members, they are not tech savvy, they might not have an email address. So how do you do that? So how do you come to a conclusion whether your company is eligible to conduct virtual AGM or not? So the first thing would be, the members would include minimum 50% of the total members of the company, and minimum 75% of paid up value of paid up capital of the members. Now, if both the above conditions are satisfied, AGM can be conducted through video conferencing or other audio-visual means. Now coming to the other point, now how to conduct virtual AGM and the infrastructure required. And what is the infrastructure required to conduct virtual AGM? The first thing, notice, as I said earlier, notice for AGM should be sent through email registered with the company. So all the members who are shareholders of the company, you need to the company should possess the email address of all the members of the company, and they should send notice to notice of AGM through the registered email address. Second thing, in the notice of the AGM, it should be clearly mentioned that the AGM is going to be conducted through video conferencing. The third thing is, this is a very important point, the video conferencing facility shall be kept open for at least minimum 15 minutes before the scheduled time of the AGM. So say your AGM is going to be started at 10 a.m. in the morning. So your video conferencing facilities should start at 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the AGM. And say your AGM concludes at 12 noon. So in that case, you cannot close the video conferencing facility up to 12:15 p.m. So you should provide this, keep this facility open 15 minutes prior to the scheduled time of conducting the AGM and 15 minutes after conclusion of the AGM. This is a very important point. The fourth one is the VC, the video conferencing should allow two-way teleconferencing. Why is it done? Because in the first thing itself, when I started, I said that when you conduct virtual AGM, the AGM is usually conducted so that the shareholders have the right to ask questions to the managers of the company. So the video conferencing facility should provide a two-way teleconferencing. Why? Because if they have some questions, they should be provided that they can ask their questions to the managers, and then they should be able to answer the question of the member of the company. That is why two-way teleconferencing should be provided by the company. The other thing is, so there are several businesses which are being taken up, as I earlier said, while conducting AGM. So consider adoption of the financial statements, or maybe appointment of director. So what happens in that case? So there is a vote that needs to be cast. So how do you cast vote? So company shall provide a designated email address to the members as well. So when you send the notice of AGM, you also send the email address of the company wherein the resolutions are being written, and in the notice itself you would send the resolutions and everything, but they also need to cast the vote for that particular resolution in favor or against. So when they cast the vote, they would do it by sending an email to the registered email address of the company. So the company should provide a designated email address to all the members at the time of sending the notice of AGM itself. The other important point is, in the AGM, at least one independent director, where independent director is required to be appointed. So at least one independent director and the auditor or his authorized representative should also attend such meeting. So it is very important that in an AGM, if the company demands, if the Companies Act demands that your company should appoint an independent director, that independent director should attend the meeting. If independent director is not required in your company, then in that case, your auditor should definitely attend such meeting. The last and the final important point in conducting the virtual AGM is, when the AGM is conducted, the recorded transcript of the AGM should be maintained by the company. So when you conduct the AGM, you should keep a record of the same, and that should be retained by the company for at least 3 years. So these are some of the important things that I've covered on how to conduct, how to conduct this virtual AGM, why this virtual AGM was being brought in was notified by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, how to conduct it, what are the infrastructures required. Now coming to some important part, wherein I would discuss some probable questions. People might be having a lot of questions on how to conduct, because this is the first time that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs have allowed conducting AGM through AGM virtually. So I'll go through some of the basic questions so that it becomes a lot more clearer in terms of how to conduct and how the things are to be maintained by the company. So the first question can be, can a company conduct any other special business other than ordinary business through video conferencing? Now, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, again, they have stated that a company can conduct only those special businesses which is considered unavoidable. Now, how do you really determine if a particular business which is going to be discussed in an AGM or an EGM is unavoidable or avoidable? So this is basically decided by the directors of the company. So when the directors decide to call an AGM or an EGM, annual general meeting or an extraordinary general meeting, the directors themselves decide whether the business that is going to be discussed in the meeting is avoidable or unavoidable. So if it is unavoidable, then you can call for a meeting through video conferencing facility. The other question is, can a director be removed in an AGM? So removal of director, there is a provision in Companies Act wherein the shareholders can remove director, or maybe someone else might ask for removal of director in the AGM, wherein the AGM has been asked or the EGM has been called through VC, video conferencing. So in this case, it should be very clearly noted that a removal of director cannot be discussed in a EGM or AGM which is conducted through video conferencing facility. In such case, when this kind of businesses are required to be taken up, a physical meeting shall be required to be called. So this cannot be discussed in a virtual meeting. Other question is the AGM required to be recorded? Yes, as I discussed earlier, the MCA in its circular has clearly stated that you should record the AGM. The transcript of the AGM should be recorded and it should be kept by the company for a period of minimum 3 years. So for the last couple of days, for a lot of people who are planning to conduct video conferencing meeting through video conferencing facility, there is a common question: what would be the place of the meeting? So by itself, the name itself says this is going to be a video conferencing meeting. The meeting is going to be a virtual one. In that case, you do not have a place because everyone would be sitting remotely at some place or the other, and the meeting would take place in the cloud. So virtual meetings that do not have a place, the people authorized to attend the meeting would do so over the cloud, and there is no requirement of any physical presence. So in that case, there is no requirement of a place. The fifth question is, because so everyone knows that general meeting cannot be held on a national holiday or beyond business hours. Now, after the ministry came up with this notification that the companies can conduct AGM or EGM over video conferencing facility during this period, can it conduct on a national holiday or beyond business hours? No. The answer is no. A company, whether it doesn't matter whether it is being held over video conferencing facility or physically, the provisions of holding the AGM shall not be violated. So the Companies Act provision says that it cannot be conducted on a national holiday or beyond the business hours. So in this case, even though the AGM is being conducted virtually, it shall not be conducted on a national holiday or beyond the business hours of the company. The sixth question is, what should be done if the email ID of the shareholders are not available? So in the very beginning, we discussed, like, there might be a case you are having number of shareholders, specifically in the public limited companies and the listed companies. There are a number of shareholders, and you might not have the email ID of all the shareholders. There might be people who are not tech savvy. They might not have email ID as well. So how do you do that? The Ministry of Corporate Affairs again has stated, in that case where the email ID of the shareholders are not available, the notice of the general meeting shall be put on public advertisement. So basically, if you don't have the email ID of all the shareholders, what you should do is you should put an advertisement on the newspaper of the country. So one notice would be sent, would be published in a newspaper in the vernacular language where the registered office of the company is situated. So if the registered office of the company is situated in Kolkata, you should select a newspaper wherein you can publish a meeting, and that newspaper should be in the vernacular language. Number one, you should also publish the notice in a national newspaper which has a wide circulation across the country. So maybe it might be a different newspaper, and that need not be a vernacular one. So any English newspaper which has a wide circulation across the country, you can select then that newspaper, and there also you need to publish the notice of the AGM with all the details. The seventh question is, what are the documents required to be sent along with the notice of AGM? So when the notice of AGM is sent to the members, you should send some certain documents as well along with the notice for the members to understand and review the documents, so as to give them the opportunity to come back and ask questions to the managers if they have any. So what are the documents required? So number one is audited financial statements. There's a very basic one, because the financial statements give the clear picture of the company, how it has performed in terms of profit, in terms of if it has earned loss, what is the cash flow and everything. So audited financial statements should be sent along with the notice of the annual general meeting. The second thing is director's report or board report. So director's report is the report wherein on the basis of the auditor's report and the basis of the audited financial statements and how the directors prepare to take the company forward, they put on their uh, views and standpoints on the company. So this is all about director's report. The third thing that needs to be required to be sent is auditor's report. So the first one is audited financial statements, the director's report, and the auditor's report as well. So auditor's report, because if the auditor is put across some remarks, the shareholder should be able to know what are those remarks, and they should be able to understand, and they should be able to ask the managers of the company why the auditor has put those remarks. And this is specifically the reason why auditor is also required to attend the annual general meeting, so that the members have the opportunity, so that if required, the members can also ask question to the auditor of the company. So these are the three documents that are required and auditor's report. The next question is the company required to keep the proof of sending notice of AGM? Yes, every company should preserve the proof of for a minimum period of 3 years. So along with the maintaining the transcript of the AGM that has been held virtually, the company should also keep a proof of sending the notice of AGM as well. So when you send notice of the AGM, you should keep a proof of that as well for a minimum period of 3 years. The other question is, so as we discussed that the documents are being kept open for during the AGM for the members to inspect the documents, and they can ask questions to the managers of the company while when the AGM is conducted. What are the registers specifically required to be kept open during the AGM? So when the AGM is held, what are the registers required to be kept open for inspection by the members? Number one register is register of directors and KMP along with their shareholding. So the directors who are the directors of the company, and if there is any KMP in the company, there is a register of directors. This is a part of statutory register which is required to be maintained by the company. That register is required to be kept open, and that should also highlight the shareholding pattern of the directors and KMPs of the company. The other register that is required to be kept open is register of contracts and arrangements. I'm sorry. So the company might enter into different contracts or different arrangements. So in that case, the company should, this is another statutory register, the register of contracts and arrangements, wherein the company should put in the details of if the company has entered into any contracts or arrangements. So these two registers are required to be kept open during the AGM for inspection by the members, so that they can inspect if they want to, and they can ask questions to the managers of the company on these areas. I've covered almost everything on conducting virtual AGM, and what are the infrastructure required, what are the legalities to be followed, how the things are to be maintained by the company. If any of the things are not met by the company, if there is a problem, if you say if you don't have the email address of the company, in that case you can ask the email, you can get the email address of the members of the company, and then you can send the notices. But if you do not have it at all, then you do not have any chance of conducting virtual AGM. You will have to conduct it physically. But yes, conducting AGM virtually, the ministry has, as the ministry has given this liberty by this circular, then this is definitely going to be a big relief for a lot of companies, uh, large companies, small companies as well. There are several companies who might have raised funds. There are investors from several cities, even there are investors from outside India, foreign investors, so they might not be able to come to India and attend the meeting, as well as considering the social distancing measures which are required to be taken as per the government directive. This is very important that if that when the AGM is conducted, if not physically, then you are able to conduct it virtually. And when conducted virtually, the things are kept in mind, the legalities are kept in mind, and you are able to do it properly without violating the company provisions of Companies Act. So I've almost covered this part. Probably in the near future, a lot of companies, it would also help companies in reducing the cost as well. So conducting physical meetings, it involves a lot of cost. You need to hire venue, there is refreshment cost, uh, voting facilities, etc., etc. There are a lot of things. So probably conducting virtual AGM or EGM would reduce that cost, and maybe in the near future MCM might come up with this liberty, saying that you can conduct virtual meetings. But for 2020, yes, as the ministry has already stated, you can conduct it no matter what. Even the listed entities have also been given the liberty. The SEBI has come up with a circular that they can conduct virtual AGMs. So any company, if you're thinking to hold the AGM, EGM virtually, go ahead and do it. Take the opportunity, reduce your cost, because this is very important time to manage the cash flow as well. uh, I've almost discussed all the provisions, what is required to be done while conducting virtual AGM. In case there are any questions or you have any doubts, people can come up with the questions. You can write back to us at info@taxmantra.com. We would be able to help you in conducting AGMs. If you have any doubt on how to send the notices and everything, how the registers are to be maintained, because statutory registers are very important. So you can come up to us and write back to us at info@taxmantra.com. uh, thanks a lot. We would connect in the next webinar. Would keep you updated on what is the topic of the next webinar. Thank you.